Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest episode of Tales from Outer Space, taken from the subreddit HFY. The links to all the stories will be down below, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. And if you do, please consider subscribing. Story number 1, Sky of Fire, written by Jormundr. For as long as I, at least, could remember, warfare on a galactic scale took place only with ships. Holding a planet with anything of value required having a fleet to defend it, or taking massive casualties and having facilities, compounds, and factories destroyed in orbital bombardment. Planetary-based defenses existed, but only to assist the fleet coordination and supplemented firepower of the defense. Then the humans were contacted. Crude methods and heavy construction, where the avian Kethra had ships of speed and grace, humans ponderously were slow and brutish. Their fighters could not match the number of the hive fleets of the Chakari, or the brute force of the race of the Irish. It wouldn't have made any difference, but their armor was far beneath that of the Heroth, whose own bodies were heavily carapaced. The only thing they had was durability. The constructions they made could have a failure after cascading failure, and still manage to work. Warfare was the status quo of the universe that the humans stumbled into. Each race would raid, pillage, destroy, and replace from each other. Negotiations happened, but usually it was a convenience and never for more than a simple shared goals. I don't know a single race that didn't laugh when the humans sent their messages of peace. They were attacked by everyone at small incursions, the hazing ritual of the universe. We laughed again as we destroyed their pitiful fleets, frustrated only in the time it took for the ships to finally die. We scoffed as we took in the wreckage in an effort to learn their technology and saw that they had absolutely nothing to give. Redundancy and support structures, lack of faith in their own technology. But even worse, they had numerous landing vehicles. Drop pods, the prisoner explained, to place the soldiers on the ground. Land vehicles and atmo-restricted aircraft, even amphibious vehicles that are supposed to travel land and liquid bodies. Here was a race that didn't understand warfare, the economy, or the price. So we left them alone after that, treating attacks for them as the same way it was star defense from asteroids. They retaliated and rallied that soon enough they grew quiet and accepted their place in the natural order. They weren't attacked only because they never had anything worth taking. When they finally stopped attacking us, we were amused they seemed to attack each other. Pirates and raiders attacking human ships since they obviously didn't stand up to the others. Factions within the species seemingly competing with each other. So they focused on their expansions and were ignored by the universe at large, which was the second mistake that we made. After a number of cycles of being ignored, the Heroth learned of a human colony world rich with rare metals. It was a standard purge, unfortunately, but common enough that nobody batted an eye. Heavy salvo, orbital strikes on major settlements, and then a flyover bombings on minor. Enough to kill most inhabitants to prevent any rebellion from forming. Not enough to make the major geological or chemical changes in the environment. It would have been the last mistake in non-combat setting that would be made with the humans. The response was immediate. The humans called out for justice, retribution, assistance, in revenge, but continued to be ignored. Their own governments forged themselves into a singular movement, and their military and production swelled. It would have been impressive if they had a force that hadn't already been tested and found lacking. Reports came of the Heroth defeat at the world that they had tried to claim, making them a laughingstock amongst the other races. We learned that their hold had been tenuous from the start, mining facilities and outposts attacked and sabotaged by survivors of bombardments, spread out and unable to exterminate without measures that would make the whole world useless, and viral attacks unable to spread due to how scattered the population was. Then, in the counter-attack launched by the humans, ground forces were deployed and crippled the planetary's defenses. Orbital stations desynced, and the fleet was pushed back by sheer numbers. The Heroth ships could weather attack after attack, but eventually failed as the sustained fire from so many wore down their defenses. They moved on from the ships that should have been crippled or dead, only to be attacked from what should have been a space garbage. The Hroth lost a few ships, but not nearly as many as the humans, who had to throw almost half their fleet and heavily outnumbered the enemy to gain a single win. The Hroth retreated, counting the planet off as a loss and not worth the resources to keep. The humans didn't stop though. By the time the next engagement happened, the Hroth had mostly forgotten about the loss, already competing for a system held by my people and weathering our heavy weapons with impenetrable shields. The humans hit them from a small agri-world, low resources and low priority for most. The ships in the system came, but instead they came in pitiable ships as before. The humans came with something different. They sported similar heavy defenses as the Hroth, making them even more difficult to kill as the redundant systems and structures keeping them fighting longer than they should have. But worse was the ugly creations that they'd made since their last fight. They'd learned not just from the armor of the ships left behind, but the equipment that remained in the mining operations. Heavily armored boarding ships launched and attached to the Hroth fleet and burrowed into them like insects, allowing the troops carried to invade the ships and take over. The galactic scene paused and noticed for the second time the human presence, but the attitude was entirely different. Nobody had standing armies, so using boarding parties was always seen as useful in dire and specific circumstances, not as a method of attack. The Hroth were suddenly attacked on multiple fronts from the humans, so much of their fleet resources having already been devoted to the preferred tactics and strategies of heavy shielding that they didn't have any immediate answer to this type of enemy that took heavy losses. They sent out desperate plea, asking for help and negotiating dwindling resources. At first, nobody wanted to help, preferring to allow them to suffer as we picked easy battles from thinning defenses of their worlds and systems. But a few battles included one race or another, and the humans were hurt by the new enemy. But they managed to survive or salvage enough to respond with something new the next time. Cathra ships were competing against flyers just as fast when they weren't being hampered by miners. Cathari ships were unable to compete with the computer drones deployed that synced more perfectly than the insect mind could think. Even our fleets were hammered by the same heavy weapons that we'd always been behind, salvo after salvo of devastating fire. That was only the areas we had originally valued. The planets they conquered were taken not with bombardment, but with troops, facilities, technology, resources, scientists and personnel. Civilian populations all fell to the humans rather than be destroyed. The ground campaigns they waged were short as they wiped away meager defenses that weren't considered necessary by their enemy. And what they gained was new ways of thinking. Technology that they lacked was made up for by us, and they won the hearts and minds of our own people by simply letting them live, rather than writing them off as they had expected. The civilians that were found and questioned always described the same thing. Fear, as the sky seemed to burst into flame from the sheer number of craft, drop pods and vehicles entering the atmosphere at high speed. Hopelessness as the military outposts were taken, governments dismantled, and their lives became uncertain. And then a surprise as the same soldiers that destroyed so much of their life set up schools, hospitals, and lines of communication before leaving and daily life returned almost to how it was, just a change in management. The humans continue to wage a galactic war, winning more than they lose, and what they leave in their wake is peace. So many people who lived hard, uncertain lives being wiped out before they knew their fleet was under attack were living prosperous lives in the human empire. I almost hope we lose completely. End of story number 1. I hope that you enjoyed, and if you did, please consider subscribing. If you wish to support the author, there is a link to the original story, so pop over there and give him your support. If you wish to support this channel, however, there are a few ways to do so. The best and easiest would be to share this video with other people, as well as liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. All of these things tell the algorithm that this channel is at least vaguely interesting and that may share it with other people. If you wish to support the channel in some other manner, watching my other videos would also help tremendously. Or, if you really like, there is a link down below to leave a tip or to join the Patreon. Any and all support is very much appreciated. And I hope that you all have a good one until the next time, and I'll see you then. Cheers.